Welcome back to the Freemausem C. We are doing today the review on the BMW GS 310 and we will answer the question, is this BMW GS 310 a true BMW GS? So, for a start, let's define with that what I mean with that. The BMW GS is famous for motorcycle touring on-road and off-road. Many people know them as the big, expensive dentist bike that is capable of many things and at the same time quite heavy. So let's see how this little Bavarian produced in India bike does. So this bike is packing a 301cc one-cylinder liquid-cooled engine that revs out quite high to above 10,000 RPM. This bike is packing 34 horsepower and 28 Newton meters of torque for a price between 5,000 and 6,000 euros. It kind of puts itself into the same category as the Royal Enfield Himalayan we had last week on the channel. Visually, this bike stays loyal to the typical BMW GS looks. But you gotta be honest, it's not the most appealing look. But it's true to the BMW GS brand. In general, when looking at this bike, you will see loads of plastic. That is due to the price of this bike. Wherever you knock, you just feel all of this is plastic. Which is fine, it doesn't rust. It's okay with the price, but with the sun it will bleach out over time probably. And also, if you drop this bike, everything will crack on it. Something that I don't like about this bike is the skid plate is out of plastic. This thing will not protect any proper hits from it. So that is already a thing where I think BMW should have put a metal skid plate on it, but there's some aftermarket parts for this. So compared to the Himalayan Scram 411 that we had last week, it's basically a different material with different perks and different downsides, but in general it's on the cheaper side. So let's get this little bike on the road and also answer the question if the BMW GS 310 is a true GS. Well, first things first, this thing sounds like a lawnmower. So let's see how much this thing pulls. So you can definitely feel the top of the rev limiter is way more fun. This feels really good. It does not have a lot of grunt down low, but that is fine. It feels really sporty getting up to 100. I like that. Also, I like that kind of feeling more than the Himalayan, to be honest. The gears are quite short, which is nice. I mean, you don't want to be super fast on this thing, but it feels fast, and that's what it's all about. So this bike does not feel the most comfortable at high speeds. I think I prefer to stay at around 80 to 90 on this one. Ooh, I'm freezing after the day of riding. So, after now having spent a full day on this bike, I can tell you what it's all about. I'll tell you the good and the bad and then answer the question of this video. So, first of all, the riding position is really good. I like it. It has a good angle for the knee. I'm a taller rider, so that is really nice for myself. And also this is a quite tall bike, but at the same time it's quite light. So even if you're a bit on the smaller side and have to put it on one foot, you'll be able to hold this bike because it's only 170 kilograms and you feel those 170 kilograms that it's really light on the road when you're driving through curves and also off-road. It feels really good in that regard. On the road, the bike goes really nimble from side to side due to its low weight, and you can also, it just feels like a street bike, even though of course the suspension is quite soft, but it's definitely doable to go quick through some twisty roads, which I really like. It felt a bit softer than the Himalayan Scram 411, because I think that's more street orientated suspension wise, but even though it still felt really good, and you can rely on this bike quite well in the curves. I like it. Also, with its little power, this bike is doing fine. It has all the power basically at the top of the rev range, which actually feels quite good because this bike still feels fast. With this little power of 34 horsepower, it's pretty easy to make a bike feel really slow, and this bike still feels satisfying to ride. You have to rev it quite a lot, and it takes quite a lot to get going, but even though that is the case, you still feel like you're riding a quick motorcycle, so that is definitely a plus. Also, it still feels really playful and just satisfying to ride in that regard. Off-road, this bike also does its job really well. I was quite careful with it off-road because this is not a bike that I own. The Biker Point company gave this bike to me for the day. I put the link to their socials down in the description. Yeah, off-road wise, it was not the best day because it all has been really wet off-road, and the tires were not really made for that. But you could feel that the bike can perform off-road, but it's an enduro. It could be better, but it definitely does the job. So no critique in that area, except of course the skid plate out of plastic. I don't feel comfortable relying on that. And I was also missing off-road a little bit the grunt down low. You feel like you could have some adventures with this bike. Like, I'm not sure if I would like take this bike outside of Europe, but like if you want to do a 3-week trip through Europe, something like this would be perfect for that. Some things that I specifically like or don't like about the bike has like a little limiter in the gas tank when you put in the thing from the gas pump, so that you always can make the tank completely full and don't have to constantly do this pulling out the thing a little bit so you can put in some more gas. It has a little limiter for that, so you can't put the thing all the way in, so that is really practical. Yeah, also the DFT dash is really nice to look at, not in the sense that it's pretty, it's not. I personally prefer manual gauges, but it shows you everything that you need to know really well. It has a gear indicator, it shows really well how much fuel you have. After a certain consummation of fuel, it switches to showing you how much range you have, so that is all really well made. Two things I don't really like. The kickstand has quite a lot of resistance and it's really hard to push down. For me it's not a problem because I can really comfortably balance the bike, but I would imagine someone being a bit smaller that has to do the whole tippy-toey side-to-side thing to balance the bike while putting down the kickstand maybe struggles with that. Also, one thing is the bike takes a really long time when you turn around the key for the board computer to fire up, which can be annoying. I mean, it definitely is annoying, to be honest, because I only had now this one day with this bike and I was already getting kind of sick of it. I was like, okay, can this thing now get going, please? And that is, yeah, that's for daily use. Can suck. That is for daily use, not the greatest, definitely. Also, I don't really like the sound of it. I'm alright with the really quiet sound of it. When you turn it on and it sounds like a lawnmower, I'm like, it's not great, but it doesn't bother me. But the bike gets really, really loud in the high revs, and that sound just sounds like the bike is about to fall apart, and that does not sound good in my opinion. But I think that's also a thing that BMWs in general have a little bit. I don't really like the sound design of BMWs. I was hearing a BMW, a really big one like the 1000 RR, and that one also has issues with the sound, so maybe BMW is just not really on the strong side when it comes to sound design. So, all in all, the question of this video, if this BMW GS 310 is a real BMW GS, and I would say I would have to answer this question with yes, because this bike with its 34 horsepower definitely has enough power to carry some luggage. You can do huge trips on it. It's definitely off-road capable. I would even argue it's more off-road capable than the normal BMW GSs like the 1200 or the 800, because it's not so heavy. You can lift this bike if it falls over. You have more confidence on the bike because it's only 170 kilos heavy. I definitely think it deserves the BMW GS name, and it performs really well for what it is. And even though this bike is now not the big 1200 GS, it definitely has similar capabilities, a similar spirit, and you can definitely do those things with this bike. And I also think the group for this bike is probably someone who gets back into riding or wants something more calm and relaxed, and a bike that kind of can do everything on a budget. I also like it more than the Royal Enfield Himalayan Scram 411 that I had last week, because it just performed better in all those areas, and I was not really a fan of the Scram 411. Probably a different story with the actual Himalayan, but I have never ridden that one, so I don't know. So to sum this video up, so if you consider buying this bike, I would go to your local BMW dealer and test ride it definitely, because it's definitely worth a look. It has some downsides, but it does what it's promising quite well. I would be really thankful if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and see you in the next one.